Hi, good morning. Get this adjusted better. Good morning, everyone. I'm sorry I'm a little bit later today. I had to get a little more sleep as I was interrupted throughout the night with some physical stuff going on. So I apologize, but here I am. It's 9:18 instead of 9:15, and I'm just going to be going through chapter 10 of Joshua, but we're not going to finish the whole chapter because it's a long one and we've got a few things that we want to touch on in the beginning of the chapter today. So, Joshua chapter 10. Hello, I think Michelle, you must be on, and I'm not sure who else is going to join us today at this later time, but um, yeah, here we go. This is going to be a little bit about battling with the Lord, how he got into the battle himself in this chapter, in chapter 10. A little bit about weather, what the weather can do, and how we can decree things, declare things. It's different than just praying. Praying is not just, but it's different than praying. It's also speaking things out of our mouth that we expect to happen. Okay, so let's read a little bit here in chapter 10. Hi, Marie. All right, so Adonai-Zedek, the king of Jerusalem, this is the first time Jerusalem is mentioned in the Old Testament, was struck with fear when he heard how Joshua had totally destroyed the kings and cities of Ai and Jericho, and that the people of Gibeon had made a peace treaty with Israel and were living alongside them. The city of Gibeon was larger than Ai. Okay, so Gibeon's larger than Ai. We're kind of getting an understanding of things here. As large as any of the cities that were ruled by a king, and all its men were known as great warriors. So this was a king, a city of warriors. So King Adonai-Zedek of Jerusalem sent messages to King Hoham of Hebron, King Purim of Jeremoth, King Japhia of Lachish, and King Deber of Eglon. The people of Gibeon have made peace with Joshua and the Israelites. Come and help me attack them. So he is setting up some alliances. The five Amorite kings joined forces, the king of Jerusalem, Hebron, Jarmuth, Lachish, and Eglon, and their combined armies surrounded Gibeon and attacked it. Now, Gibeon, we learned yesterday, had made a covenant with Joshua and the Israelites, and they were to be their water bearers, water carriers, and their woodcutters, serving the Lord for the temple sacrifices. And they were promised to be protected all their lives. So when they came to attack them, the Gibeonites sent out a call for help to Joshua at the camp in Gilgal. Don't abandon us. They're like, come on, hello, we're getting attacked here. For we are your servants. Come quickly and save us. Help us. For the Amorite kings of the hill country have surrounded us. So Joshua and all his fighting men and all the mighty warriors of Israel left Gilgal to aid the Gibeonites. Yahweh spoke to Joshua, do not fear the Amorite kings and their armies, for I have decreed your victory over them. Not one will withstand you. I think this is not the only place where the word decree is used, of course. It's used again later on in this chapter, but this is where we begin to learn about decrees. And the Lord Himself says, I have decreed your victory over them, which means it will come to pass. And He says, not one will withstand you. So before we read any further here, I just want to see if there's anything that I wanted to bring out. I told you that Jerusalem's mentioned here. Jerusalem is known as the city of peace. That's the foundation of peace in Israel, and that is kind of strange and odd that they're in this battle against Joshua. I don't really know enough of the history to know why, but here's 5 kings that come up against them, against the Gibeonites. The word Hebron means alliance. The word Piram means wild donkey or fierce. And the word Jermuth means a high place. And remember, we talked about getting rid of strongholds in our life, that we had that homework assignment. And these are these are the attitudes and the places that God, by His Holy Spirit, wants to come in and help us rid ourselves of um, things like arrogance, our attitude of only needing ourselves to fight a battle, which is pretty dangerous. The word Japhia is one who enlightens or who is elevated. And Lashish means invincible. Okay, so these are the meanings of their names. Deber, or Debir, means speaker or oracle. He was the king of Eglon. Eglon means young bull. Um, so all these 5 kings and the combined forces of these kingdoms would have been really intimidating to come against the Gibeonites. But it was the Lord's plan to defeat them in an epic battle. And this is going to be described here in a few more verses how he gets involved. Um, Gibeon's people, remember, were known as great warriors before they became the servants that they came into covenant with to become the servants of the Israelites. And it's noted here in verse 6 that they didn't trust in their own strength or their own fighting ability, but they called for help. You know, they said, "Don't abandon us, for we are your servants." And they cried out to Joshua, and Joshua is, as we've been saying, a type of Jesus. So they were calling out to the Lord for help and not relying on their own strength, and that's the right thing to do. That's the right thing to do. Um, let's see. Okay, so Yahweh is speaking to Joshua again, reassuring him in verse 8 that he's going to take care of this. And Brian Simmons says here in the notes, it's really important that leaders today be able to hear the voice of the Lord. And it is so important for themselves to be able to hear God for themselves. All right, so we're going to start verse 9 here. Um, and we'll come back about the whole idea about a decree. That will be what we focus on later. Joshua and his fighting force marched all night long from Gilgal to Gibeon and took them all by surprise. It takes about 9 hours, it said, to march over into the uphill country where they were going to battle. Joshua inflicted a crushing defeat on them at Gibeon, for Yahweh threw the Amorites into a panic at the sudden sight of Israel's army. Yahweh empowered Joshua and his army to chase them in the direction of the Beth Horon ascent, and they slaughtered the king's armies all the way to Azekah and the city of Makkedah. As the Amorites raced down the hill to Beth Horon, Yahweh hurled large hailstones on them from the sky, and the hail continued to fall all the way to Azekah. In fact, more men died from Yahweh's hailstones than by the swords of the Israelites. So this is really interesting to note here that Yahweh, God himself, got involved in the battle. He himself hurled down large hailstones that were killing these people. And more hailstones fell from the sky, killing people than the swords of the Israelites killed people. I looked this up, and um, first of all, this is a supernatural intervention by the Lord, and He's using the weather, and He's turning the weather in a kind of an odd way to fight this battle and to have the outcome that He has decreed will happen. Um, so that tells us a lot about weather and how God can shift things Himself. Just, of course, He does. He's in control of it all. Just to have the outcome in the day or in the circumstances that He planned for. Um, So this whole thing is a supernatural event. I'm going back into verse 10, which is on page 31. Yahweh empowered the army after an all-night march. So they've been marching for 9 hours, and he empowered them to fight victoriously over the coalition of the Amorites. So they didn't rest. They went right into battle. He empowered them to run for many miles when Israel's fighting force turned south from Beth Horon all the way to Azekah and Makkedah. This was a supernatural event, not accomplished by the might of Israel's army alone. God gave them supernatural strength to fight, and that's what I want. That's what I think we all want, is supernatural strength to fight our battles. Um, okay, so back to the hailstones for a minute. In recent history, there's been in South Dakota hailstones recorded in 2010 that were as large as volleyballs. They were what does it say? I think it was 8 inches, however big that is, in size, and 2 pounds. And they were falling from the sky. Now, I didn't look this up to see what the damage was, but you can look that up if you want. But there has been recorded hailstones in history weighing over 120 pounds. That's 60 times the size. So that, I don't know when that was. That's down in the notes here on page 32. But I just want you to take note that there are unusual supernatural weather patterns that come as an act of God. I guess that's why they call it in your insurance policy an act of God. There was some fear of the Lord when they wrote those insurance policies. Um, all right, so God supernaturally directed the hailstones to hit the Amorites, and they were 2 pounds in size. If you had like a, even just well, if you had volleyballs falling from the sky that weighed 2 pounds and weren't light, they would kill you. The other supernatural part of this is that they did not hit the Israelites. So he was hurling them himself. He was directing them and knowing who to hit and who not to hit. I think this is it's amazing. Good gracious is right. Um, I'm trying to see if there was anything else about the hailstones. Okay, so if that weren't enough, excuse me, here's the next part about the weather that I think is just super intriguing. In verse 12, it says, Yahweh gave the men of Israel victory over the Amorites that day, and the people that day, and the day when Joshua stood before the people and prayed to Yahweh. Now he's praying to Yahweh, but he's actually making another decree, as Yahweh demonstrated a few verses before. And he says, Sun, S-U-N, sun up in the sky, stand still over Gibeon. Moon, which I was looking at last night, was so pretty. Moon, stay where you are over the valley of Ajalon. So he is telling, commanding, decreeing the moon and the sun what to do. He's telling it what to do. And so the sun stood still. The sun obeyed. The sun stood still in the middle of the sky and was in no hurry to set. I love that. It was in no hurry to set until one day became two. And the moon halted. The moon stopped. It didn't move while the nation triumphed over its enemies, as is also recorded in the scroll of the upright one. It was the day Yahweh himself fought for Israel. There has never been a day like it before or since, a day when Yahweh obeyed the voice of a man. After that victory, Joshua and his fighting men returned to their camp at Gilgal. So this is, you just kind of have to sit back and go, wow, wow, look at this. God is obeying the voice of man. And so this led me down into a little bit of studying about decrees. And let's read the notes in verse 13. This chapter contains perhaps the most amazing miracle that was recorded in Israel's history. By the decree of a mortal, meaning Joshua, the entire cosmos paused as Yahweh himself fought for his people. God will go to any length to see that you win your battles as you live in faith and obedience to him. God is the engineer of the universe and holds its controls in his hands. He can accelerate or slow down the created order he set in place. He can accelerate or slow down the created order that he himself set in place in response to a mere man. I just think someday when we get to heaven, it's going to be fun to meet these guys and to shake the hand of Joshua and to just go, wow. God listened to you, and what he did through you was just amazing. Um, let's see here. All right, so it says up in verse 14, there's never been a day like it or before or since a day when Yahweh obeyed the voice of a man. So I think we take from that there's never been a day like this where the moon and the sun were ordered to stand still and they obeyed. However, um, the Lord has used many people to establish decrees in the earth, and he has listened to or obeyed their voice, for lack of a better term. He has heard their decree, spoken out in faith, ordained by himself, God himself, and he has turned. I mean, there are many times when people standing in faith decree, perhaps like to a whirlwind or to a tornado, turn and go the other way, away from our home, and it does. And so I just wanted to. That's just one example. I just wanted to read to you a bit from a Bible study that I was looking at this morning. Um, all I know about it is it's called Faith Life, Faithlife sermons. And then the way that I found it was typing up the power of the decree. And it led me to a verse which I think we all know, which is in Job 22:28. And I want to read that to you. It says in the New King James Version, you will also declare a thing, and it will be established for you. So light will shine on your ways. Um, and the word declare is the word gazar, Gazar. I'm just reading a couple sentences from this Bible study in the Hebrew, and it means to divide or to cut into two, to divide an object into two parts. It's to give an official order or command, implying sanctions for disobedience. So here it means to decide on or come to conclusion in the thinking and the planning process. And what the person that wrote this brings out, and it's a woman actually, her name is her name? Sherry Wilson. So what she brings out here is that it's an interest. This is interesting because it reveals that the decree actually starts in your thinking and planning processes before it's spoken. It's to come to a conclusion or to make up your mind, to place in the heart or the mind, to place in the spirit or the mind, to become of a mind, to make a decision to carry out some action, but with emphasis upon the impulse involved, to fix one's face with emphasis on finality, to conclude by bringing together different aspects of related information to determine beforehand and that decided in advance. Um, the best example of this, she goes on to write, is I think in the book of, oh, she didn't say here, it's got to be in the book of Hebrews. And she says about Abraham that he's been called the father of many nations, and that he called those things which do not exist as though they did. Contrary to hope, in hope believed, so that he became a father of many nations according to what was spoken. So shall your descendants be. And not being weak in faith, he did not consider his own body already dead. He did not waver in the promise of God through unbelief. He was strengthened in faith and gave glory to God, and he was fully convinced. It says, in being fully convinced that what he had promised, he was also able to perform. And there's several key things here on the life of Abraham that we see. He believed God because he lived in God's presence and he knew how God worked. God calls things that don't exist as though they did. So he knew that about God. And then he had history with God that pointed to God's faithfulness. Um, and when it came to him being able to bear or to produce a son, it says he didn't consider his own body. Consider means to direct one's mind to a whole object. It means to consider closely. This results in a confession. He didn't, number four, he didn't waver or separate himself from the promise through unbelief. And I really got convicted when I read this because I thought, how many times do I do this a lot? I'm just telling you straight up that I separate myself from God's promises through unbelief, and I'm trying to root out unbelief in my life. And then number five, he was fully convinced, which is the idea of declaring in Job. It's to be certain that the truth, be certain of the truth of something. This is a really good study. I'll actually pin this to, or comments, not pin it, that sounds so official. I will post it in a comment here to you, so the link, so that if you want to read the whole thing yourself, you can. The power of the decree. And I just want to just say that it's something that I'm still learning about and that I'm still understanding. And actually, I don't feel myself developed in a mature way in this decreeing a thing. Maybe some of you are really good at this. I think, and I admire you and I want to learn from you if this is something that you do regularly or as the Holy Spirit leads. But I think the baby steps that I've taken over the last few years is that rather than thinking something in my mind, even if it's late at night and I'm tired, I try really hard to get it out of my mouth and speak it out into the atmosphere. And so I do feel like a switch and a turn there where I'm opening my mouth, so to speak, to say the things that I think that are important that God is showing me. So for instance, sometimes I'll rise up, like I feel this stirring over one of my children, and I'll just come out at it. Sometimes I have to physically get up and walk around and say the things with my mouth. And I don't just think about it. I don't just go, God, I pray that you would bless my daughter or, whatever. Sometimes I'm just saying, no, this is what's going to happen. This is what I see. This is what the Lord has promised. And it's like jumping into the gym, after you've been out of shape for a long time. It is a working of a spiritual muscle that is, to me, in some instances, almost feels atrophy. So, all that to say, I want to learn with you about this, and I'd love any input that you have. And I'm going to leave it there for today because there's a lot more battle that goes on through chapter 10 that we can learn about tomorrow. So happy Thursday. I don't know what's on your plate today, but I pray that you have a good day. It's going to be super hot here, supposedly. So decree and declare that the temperatures come down in the name of Jesus and that a cool breeze runs through this land and that no fires be set in any way by man or by weather patterns in Jesus' name. All right. God bless you and have a great day. Yes, good job, Michelle. I'm so glad that you're practicing that with the weather. That's awesome. All right. Have a great, blessed day, and I'll see you tomorrow, Lord willing. All right. Bye bye.